I'm from a new path, which is Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing, and this is our overdose prevention and response family and peer administered naloxone program, where we distribute naloxone with short training to make sure that you can respond and recognize an opioid overdose if you were ever to encounter one. So it's a program of a new path, and all of my contact information is on this first slide. So if you ever have any questions, please feel free to contact me at any time with any of those forms. A new path, just to give you a little bit of background about us, we are Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing. We're a nonprofit advocacy organization of parents, concerned citizens, individuals in recovery, healthcare professionals, and community leaders. A New Path was founded in 1999. We strive to ensure access to quality, cost-effective addiction treatment services, lessen harms associated with addictive illness, to reduce recidivism and save lives. We cannot take all the credit for this program. We were not the first people to come up with this. We would like to give all the credit to Mary Wheeler of the Healthy Streets Outreach Program in Boston, Massachusetts. She has been doing this since the early 2000s, giving out clean needles from the back of her car, and naloxone purchased out of pocket, and she helped start this program and change laws to give people Narcan to use at home. OD stats. In San Diego County, someone dies from an opioid overdose every 3 days. That was 273 deaths in 2017. Opioid overdose is the leading cause of an accidental death. There are only 2 opioid overdose prevention and recovery training programs in San Diego, which is us and Family Health Centers of San Diego at their county syringe exchange program. We're big on family intervention. We like to give resources to families who maybe have never experienced addictive illness or opioid overdose. So we want to kind of prepare families, friends, peers for something that they might expect if they ever run into this. So the majority of ODs occur in the presence of others. Most opioid ODs can be reversed by rescue breathing and or naloxone administration. Many younger drug users are still living at home or can still visit the home. Treatment options can be discussed at the hospital with family present in case of an overdose. We like to give realistic and useful education for families. Training program details. This will work a little bit differently because of the webinar. We will have an online form for you to be able to fill out. It's the registration form, so please make sure you follow the directions when you click on that link. Make sure this form is signed, or you'll not be able to receive Narcan if you would like to receive a free kit of Narcan after taking this webinar training. We'll go over the California law that allows anyone at risk for having or witnessing a drug overdose to obtain a prescription for naloxone. We have a standing order that authorizes a new path to provide naloxone under a prescription, which is for the whole state of California for people who complete our training. And a new path provides free group and individual trainings for naloxone in San Diego County. So if you'd like to take a training at your facility and train your staff, if you did not want to take the webinar, or if you wanted to have a one-on-one or a group session in person, you can definitely contact me and we'll set that up. Your training components today are about 20 minutes. Registration form, print that out please if you would like to get that kit, like I said. Review of overdose risks, prevention, response, calling 911, rescue breathing, safe administration of naloxone, and the refill procedure. What are opioids? The group of drugs or opioids includes heroin, morphine, codeine, oxycodone, other prescription painkillers like Vicodin, Percocet, fentanyl, which is synthetic, and carfentanil, which is also synthetic. This does not include benzodiazepines. So for those who don't know, naloxone only works for opioids, no other drugs. Meth, speed, anything like that, cocaine, it does not work. What is naloxone? Naloxone is a prescription medicine that is used to reverse an opioid overdose. It can't be used to get high. It's not addictive. Paramedics and doctors have been using it for decades. It's safe and effective. It also goes by the brand name Narcan, and it's an opioid antagonist. So we'll go over the overview for opioid overdose, the risks and prevention. So this slide, it's a nice little example of what it looks like if someone is going through an opioid overdose in their mind. So there's that receptor, which is purple, and the green ball would technically be the drug. When you've taken too much of that opioid, it sits on that receptor in the brain and takes over to where the body forgets to breathe. So it fits exactly on all of those receptors, and it numbs the body so much that it's not doing the one thing it needs to do to stay alive. So the brain has many receptors for opioids. Too much of an opioid fitting into many receptors slow and stop breathing. Some people will consider seeing somebody going through an opioid overdose and think it's a cardiac arrest because it mimics the non-breathing patterns of somebody who might have suffered a cardiac arrest, but this actually has nothing to do with the heart and is completely about the brain. So what happens when you take naloxone and you give naloxone to somebody who is overdosing is that the naloxone comes and pushes the drug off of the receptor temporarily. This does not last very long, 20 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour at most. So it is not something that can be used for a cure for addictive illness. It's not something that once you give it to someone, it's going to make the drug addiction go away. It is something just to make sure that the body remembers to breathe. So it kicks that drug off the brain and has the drug sit elsewhere in the brain while it reminds the body to breathe. So it has a stronger affinity to the opioid receptors than the opioid, so it knocks the opioid off the receptors for a short time and lets the person breathe again. So ODs continue, just to give a little more information about what can happen. They can be instantaneous or over a period of time. They happen usually 1 to 3 hours after a person is actively using. And when we say this is maybe somebody who has an active prescription from a doctor that has maybe Vicodin, and you take it every 3 hours as prescribed for pain, whether it's 1 to 2 pills, or if it is an illicit drug, even if it was heroin and you're taking that every 4 to 5 hours during the day. If you are actively using, it is currently and consistently knocking that receptor into high use, and then it gets dulled down and the receptor gives up probably 1 to 3 hours after the last time the drug was used, so it can be over a period of time. With fentanyl or carfentanil, it happens instantaneously because of how strong the drugs are, the synthetic drugs. Fentanyl is, I believe, 30 times stronger than heroin, and carfentanil is 300 times stronger than heroin because it is an elephant tranquilizer. So it is a very, very serious and strong drug. With new users, ODs can be instantaneous because they have never had that substance in the body, so the body does not know how to react to it. And someone found dead with a needle in their arm is a rare event that's sensationalized. Risks for overdose. Mixing drugs is a huge risk for overdose. Benzos are common in opioid ODs. Uppers and downers don't cancel each other out. If it was maybe street drugs, you'll hear speedballs. Someone will take heroin and then they'll do cocaine later because if they're coming down, they want to come back up. It's, logically would make sense, but they do not cancel each other out. That actually poses more risk for the person by ingesting more drugs. Mixing opioids and stimulants increase the risks for overdose. Tolerance changes, this is a big one in the recovery community, like leaving detox or jail. If somebody checked into detox or was arrested, let's say over the weekend on Friday, they get released on Monday, they decide they don't want to, maybe hit recovery yet, or that since they were in jail, they weren't able to use. So they use the same amount they might have used before they went to detox or before they went to jail, and they use the same amount and they could go out instantly because they haven't had that drug in the system for a short period of time. So your tolerance basically goes back to 0, so keep that in mind. Using alone, obviously, because no one can save you. Changing in dealer, product type, or purity, and the method of taking. So people don't normally know this, that if you take a drug, whether it's a pill or if it's IV drug users that are shooting up heroin, or if it's somebody that is maybe crushing it down, sniffing it, if you are changing the method of taking, whether it was IV to sniffing or if it was ingesting a pill to inserting it rectally, the body atomizes things completely different through each way that you take it. So if you have been using something a certain way for a long period of time and change it up, that your body could go into shock and decide that it does not want the drug, even if it's something you've been taking, and you can have an OD that way. And thinking you know everything is a big one for risks for overdose. Benzos and opioid ODs, we like to address this because benzos are almost always found in opioid ODs. It's because they enhance the effects of high, or they can reduce the symptoms of withdrawal. They're long acting, they are time release, so they usually last all day. They impair your short-term memory, so you can forget how much you've used recently. They're very common and easy to find on the street. They're cheaper than heroin. They're frequently prescribed for mental health treatment reasons, and the drugs could be cut with benzos without the user knowing. And examples of benzos are Xanax, Klonopin, or Valium. We like to touch on this just because of the amount of ODs that are found with benzos in them. It is not a guarantee. Narcan only works for opioids, but they have rescued people with Narcan that have used benzos as well. It's not, like I said, a guarantee, but it's something that you should still try. That's the whole point of this program, is to use Narcan to see if you can save someone's life. Prevention messages for families. I want to remind you that because or when your tolerance is low, you're at high risk for an overdose. Do you have an overdose plan? Do you and your friends know about naloxone? Overdose plans are things we like to set in place or talk to sober living homes, transitional facilities, making sure that you know or your staff knows where the naloxone is kept, how it's used, and that you know what to do in case of an overdose as a unit for your staff. I love you, but not what you do, and I don't want anything to happen to you, and if you relapse, please don't do it alone. So now we'll go into responding to an opioid overdose. Signs and symptoms of an OD. A lot of people, like I said, they have not experienced addictive illness and they maybe have no idea what it would look like if someone OD'd. These are kind of the symptoms you want to keep an eye out for. So body is very limp, the face is very pale because they're not breathing. Pulse or heartbeat is slow, erratic, or not there at all. Throwing up, passing out, choking sounds or gurgling. Awake but unable to respond. Blue or ashy skin tinge, usually the lips or the fingertips go first. We'll have a lot of people ask us, well, what's the difference between really high or an overdose? So if someone's really high, you're gonna see maybe their muscles are relaxed. You know, if you're taking a pain pill, that everything kind of just starts to melt away. You see them that they might be a little bit sleepy looking. Speech is slow or slurred. Nodding is, you know, maybe you could be having a conversation with them and their head's kind of, you know, tossing in and out. Responsive to stimulation like yelling or a sternum rub. If someone's overdosing, so the versus really high, deep snoring or gurgling, which they like to call the death rattle because your body is trying to breathe and it knows it's supposed to be breathing, but the mind does not remember to do it. So it creates this awful snoring sound. So if somebody maybe has never snored before and you're keeping an eye on that person, and all of a sudden they start to snore really loudly or it sounds very, very disturbing, if you want to put it that way, that is something to keep an eye out for because it could be the death rattle. Very infrequent or no breathing, pale or clammy skin because they're not breathing. Heavy nod, so somebody maybe come home is passed out on the couch and they're like completely passed out in a weird position. They might have fallen over onto themselves. Those are very odd positions for the body, so you know that that's not how people normally take a nap or go to sleep. You might want to go check on that person because that is not something you would normally see if someone was doing that. Not responsive to stimulation and a slow heartbeat or pulse. So identifying an overdose. You've seen enough to be worried, whether it's 1, 5, or all of the symptoms on the previous page. You want to check on them by maybe kicking their foot, shaking their shoulders a little bit, asking if they're okay, saying something alarming like your mom is coming because maybe if they're not supposed to be using, they are going to be worried about being in trouble. Or a cop is coming because that's something alarming for someone that does not want to get in trouble. So if there's no response, you're going to try the sternum rub, which is taking your knuckles right here, the top of your knuckles, and raking it across the breastbone. If you do it to yourself right now, you'll notice that it's not really comfortable. So if somebody doesn't respond to the sternum rub, that is something that you're going to want to start going into your overdose procedure. It's enough pain for the sternum rub to wake someone up, but it does not cause long-term damage. This is usually the point when someone recognizes an opioid overdose and they see a loved one not breathing and they go into a process of, you know, kind of trying to shock them to get them to wake up, like throwing them into an ice cold bath, putting them into a cold shower, feeding them water just to see if they'll try and drink it. These are all things that usually will cause more harm to the body, so you want to stay away from that, especially if you have naloxone. So if there's still no response from the person when you try to wake them up, call 911 and proceed to overdose procedure. So the way that this is going to go, if you're going to rescue someone and you have naloxone and you're going to reverse an opioid overdose, you're going to call 911. That is the first thing you're going to do. And then you're going to rescue breathe, administer Narcan, continue to rescue breathe. If no response within 2 to 3 minutes, administer the second dose of naloxone, and then continue rescue breathing. So if you already have kits, you hopefully know how to use them. If not, at least I've briefed you. All forms of naloxone are technically the same, whether they're nasal, intramuscular, the autonasals, or the ones that we have are the autonasals. So these are 2 doses per kit. It's upside down. 2 doses per kit. So you get 2 of these little doses that are foil packed, individual doses. If you were to use them versus an intramuscular, they all work the same. You do the same rescue procedure, which is the call 911, do rescue breathing, and then continue to administer the second dose of Narcan, and then continue rescue breathing until the ambulance gets there. I'm going to go into 4 main ways that have been reported to us that a rescue could go. So just to kind of keep a a mindful watch of what potentially could happen during a rescue. These are the four main ways that have been reported. So the first way is after you call 911, you do your rescue breathing, which is laying the person flat on their back, plugging the nose, tilting the head back, and checking the airway. If the airway is not clear, the only time you swoop anything out of the mouth is if you see it only in the top of the mouth by the tongue. Anywhere towards the back of the throat, you do not touch it because this person could be put into harm's way from choking versus their overdose. So if you see something at the top of the mouth, then you take your pinky, hook, swoop it out of the mouth. If it's too far back, leave it. The paramedics will take care of it, and you just continue on with rescue breathing. So you've done the rescue breathing and you're about to administer your first dose of Narcan. If you are getting an auto-nasal kit from us after this training, this is the way it would go. You would peel back the foil, take that auto-nasal out, you would inject it into their nose. People always worry, what if I hurt them because it's going into their nostril? You don't have to worry about that. This person unfortunately is passed out and ODing, but them getting a hurt nose versus them passing away is a lot more, you'd want to have them have a hurt nose instead. So you're going to take that auto-nasal, put your finger on the plunger, stick it into the nose, and you're going to plunge down once. It does not need multiple plunging. It just needs to go in once. It has a seal, it'll break, and it'll atomize into the nasal cavity. People normally ask if this person is not breathing, how is it going to get into the bloodstream? It goes in through the mucous membrane. You don't have to worry about this going into their body because they have to breathe. It does not need breathing. It just goes straight into the nose and it'll drip into the mucous membrane and atomize into the bloodstream from there. So you've done your first dose of Narcan. Take a step back for yourself because if you've never witnessed an opioid overdose, people could come back swinging, they could be yelling, vomiting, urinating themselves. So you want to keep yourself safe and make sure that you're out of harm's way after this person could potentially wake up in a disturbed manner. So take a step back for yourself. About 20 to 40 seconds later, this person should wake up, no more than a minute. No one's going to be holding a stopwatch while they are doing an opioid overdose. So if it feels like it's been about a minute, then you, and they haven't woken up, you can administer the second dose of Narcan. That's why they have 2 doses in there. It's called the rescue dose. So the first way that things have gone, and this is the most reported way, is they've administered 1 dose of Narcan and they've been taken into the ambulance after they've woken up because the Narcan was enough and they were able to be rescued. So that is the main way, that it's about 85 to 90% effective for people who are only using opioids. So the chances of them waking up, if you know it's just an opioid user, that they will wake up from the Naloxone and they will be escorted into the ambulance. The second way this could happen is after you do 911 rescue breathing, you administer your first dose of Narcan, take a step back for yourself. The person hasn't woken up yet. In 20 to 40 seconds, administer that second dose. After that second dose, hopefully that person will wake up. Maybe they just needed a little bit more depending on the drug they took or the amount they took. And then they can go into the ambulance and be further cared for. Third way things can happen is that you administer the first dose. They wake up just fine, however long it took them to wake up. They wake up, ambulance hasn't made it to you yet, and they might overdose again. Like I said, Narcan is a temporary thing where it kicks the drug off for a short period of time, 20 to 40 minutes roughly, 90 minutes at most. It's 30 to 90 minutes at most. If this person goes back into an overdose from the first time you rescue them and the ambulance hasn't made it to you, then you're going to administer that second dose of Naloxone. They will wake up again, and hopefully by then the ambulance will make it to you and then they can be further cared for. Fourth way things can happen is that they do not wake up at all from the 1 or 2 doses, or even if you had more and you give them 3 or 4, you might have been too late, unfortunately, or they could have been mixing drugs where the Naloxone would not be working. This is not your fault, you're not liable, you tried to rescue them. So if you did call 911 and the ambulance does make its way there, let them know what you tried to do, and they will handle it from there. So those are the 4 main ways things can happen. So just to keep in mind of how it goes for the overdose procedure is call 911, do rescue breathing, administer Narcan, whether it's 1 or 2 doses, if no, and then continue rescue breathing after. And make sure this person goes and seeks medical attention after they have overdosed because their body has almost passed away. That's really, really hard on the mind. They're not breathing. After 3 minutes, the brain starts to die, and if it's not getting oxygen. So you want to make sure this person seeks medical attention to make sure that they are still, their body is functioning properly, that nothing happened while they had overdosed. They could have fallen and hit their head and gotten a concussion before they overdosed. They could have vomited and choked, and they could have aspirated, and they could aspirate, and they could get pneumonia after the overdose is done. So you want to make sure that they are further cared for after the overdose procedure is over. So just to go into the steps a little bit further into detail, telling 911 exactly where you are, making sure when you call them, and that someone is not responding and they're not breathing. A lot of people are worried about police following the ambulance, and maybe they might have felony convictions or misdemeanors, any kind of warrants for their arrest, so they refrain from calling 911 because they are worried about legal ramifications. So you don't need to say someone overdosed if you really are worried about a police car following that ambulance. But the Good Samaritan law was put in place for that, which I will go over. It protects prosecution for many drug offenses. So the fine print of that law for the Good Samaritan law is outstanding felony warrants for manufacturing, trafficking, distribution, and murder, which are all high felony crimes. So if you have not served your time for any of those, that is the only time you could be at risk for arrest at an overdose. But the chances of someone coming up to see and arrest you, like your arresting officer, are highly unlikely. So if you have to leave the person, still call 911, so at least they can be further saved by the ambulance and the EMT and the emergency medical professionals. Barriers to calling 911. A lot of people refuse to call 911, like I said, and these are the reasons they would potentially refuse, is fear of legal risk, outstanding warrants, DSS involvement, loss of public housing, fear of judgment from family and community, personal embarrassment or shame, and other punitive measures. Students could lose federal financial aid if they have something on their record. So there's a lot of reasons why people will not call 911. The Good Samaritan law, under California law, if you witness an overdose and call 911 for help, you are protected. It shall not be a crime for any person who in good faith seeks medical assistance for the person experiencing a drug-related overdose to be under the influence of or to possess for personal use controlled substance analog, or drug paraphernalia. The person is experiencing an overdose is also protected from these offenses. So they should not be searching you or trying to arrest you for this drug overdose. Responding recovery position. So this isn't just for anybody who wants to leave the person alone because they're worried about legal things. This is also if, say, the person has OD'd downstairs and the naloxone is kept in a medicine cabinet somewhere else in the house, upstairs, far further away than you think it is. You want to leave this person alone, whether it's 1 minute or 5 minutes. This is the position you want to leave them in so that they can't roll and hit their head, or they can't roll onto their back, vomit and aspirate, and then choke on their vomit. So this is, if any reason the person needs to be left alone, this is the position you want to leave them in. Responding to rescue breathing, like I said, if someone's choking or if they seem like they were choking on something, do not touch it. Only if it's you only touch it if it's in the top of the mouth. Put your cheek near the mouth and watch for and feel for breathing. A lot of times when you are rescue breathing, you will see the stomach rise and fall. If you want to see the chest rise and fall, usually tilt the head back a little bit further while they're laying flat on the ground. That'll give a straight shot to the diaphragm, so you'll be able to see the chest rise and fall when you're doing your rescue breaths. If the person is not breathing, this is place the person on their back, tilt the head back, put your hands under the person's neck. With one hand, with your other hand, pinch the nose closed. Make a seal over their mouth with your mouth. You can use a mask if you have one. Keeping yourself safe is also something that we suggest. So if you want to go get a breathing mask, they have them at CVS or any Rite Aid, Walgreens, any drugstore. You can get a breathing mask where it's a plastic mask that covers the whole person's face, and it has a breathing tube so you can safely do rescue breathing in case this person has vomited. As you breathe, watch their chest rise. If their stomach does not tilt the head back further, like I said. Responding to administering naloxone. So this is what it would look like if you were to administer the nasal Narcan. So you peel back the package, place the tip of the nozzle in the nostril, put your fingers to touch the bottom of the patient's nose, and then you press the plunger firmly to release the single dose into the patient's nose. Responding into rescue breathing. Continue rescue breathing if you are out of naloxone and the ambulance hasn't made it to you. If you did use those 2 doses, you can keep rescue breathing as long as you're able to. So if you have multiple people, you can take turns so you don't get tired. If it's only one, if it's just yourself, you can rescue breathe for as long as you can. Also remember to take breaks for yourself because you can't continue to always rescue breathe for this person. Responding when they come to, you want to let the person know that you saved them, and you want to let them know what's happened, explain that they overdosed, that you administered the naloxone. They may be withdrawal from the naloxone, so they won't be feeling well. They could be sweaty, they could be vomiting, they could be itchy, they have headaches. All of these symptoms of withdrawal are an immediate symptom because you are kicking the drug off the brain, so they go into immediate withdrawal. You want to inform them that naloxone wears off in 30 to 90 minutes. Opioid is still in the body. Overdose can come back once the naloxone wears off, so try not to use again, or try not to use too soon, because you could put yourself at higher risk for overdose after using naloxone. If paramedics are not coming, person should visit a doctor as soon as possible. They could have fluid or vomit in the lungs. What not to do in case of an overdose. These are things that have been reported to us on when people start to panic if they see someone that's potentially ODing in front of them. These are the things you should not do. You should just follow the steps for Narcan if you have it. Do not leave the person alone. They could stop breathing. Do not put them in a bath. They could drown. Do not induce vomiting. They could choke. Do not give them something to drink. They could throw up. Do not put ice down their pants. It could slow core temperature and slow body function even more. Do not stimulate them in a way that could cause harm. Slapping too hard, kicking in the testicles, burning the bottom of the feet with a lighter. It won't do any more than a sternum rub, causing pain and can cause long-term damage. Do not inject them with anything but naloxone. We have heard from IV drug users that they will inject their friends with salt water, cocaine, or milk. It won't do any more than a sternum rub, causing pain and can waste time and make things worse. For example, a salt injection could cause someone to go into cardiac arrest if they have high sodium levels in their system. Registration form, if you could fill that out correctly, if you would like to collect a free kit from us. We only use this to verify that someone has been trained for data collection and program evaluation. We want to know you use the naloxone. So if you do save someone with the naloxone, if you do get a kit from us, please let us know, because it helps us for grant purposes to get more free naloxone, and please come back for a refill to a new path. Naloxone Care. The expiration date on our kits go to June 2020 if you were to get it from us. They have a very long shelf life. They last up to 4 years past their expiration date. You don't need to keep them in the refrigerator, keep them away from direct sunlight and extreme heat, because it is a liquid version of a medication. It does lose its efficacy if you are keeping it in hot places. Keep in your medicine cabinet or your purse, not your car's glove box. So if you do need to keep it in your car and you are planning on taking it with you everywhere you go, I suggest getting a thermos container to kind of regulate that temperature. But if not, you could just keep it anywhere from temperature. And like I said, if you need anything, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, april@anewpath.org. You can visit our website and call 619-670-1118.